You worthless little whore. Look at me when I'm talking to you. Do you hear me? My son's life is falling apart because of you. A cursed, barren bitch who can't even give him a child, and now you've crippled his sister. What good are you? What in God's name are you even for? Her voice was a drill boring into my skull. This was Eleanor, my mother-in-law. And this was my life now. Have you ever felt a pain so deep it becomes a strange, cold numbness? A place where tears can't even form because the sorrow has burned the ducts dry? That's where I was, standing in the antiseptic glare of that hallway, while the woman who was supposed to be my family spat poison at me. The man I loved, the man I married, Nathan, is less than #0. 3# is greater than. He stood just a few feet away, his face a mask of disappointment, not at his mother, but at me, always at me. It wasn't always like this. No. Before the poison, before the numbness, there was a different kind of pain, a different boy, a different life, a life that started with a mistake so profound it would echo through all the years to come. It started with Liam, and it started on a night just like this one, with rain clawing at the window panes. I was 18, and so stupidly, breathtakingly in love. Liam and I were in the same state college, 2 kids with bigger dreams than wallets, surviving on instant noodles and stolen kisses in the campus library. For 2 years, our love felt like the only solid thing in a world of uncertainty. It was simple, it was pure, it was everything. Until that rainy night, the test strip on the cracked sink of our tiny apartment showed 2 pink lines. 2 pink lines that ended our world and started a new one. I was pregnant when I told him. The blood drained from his face. He just sat there, on the edge of our lumpy mattress, staring at the wall as if the plaster held all the answers we didn't have. Then he turned to me. His eyes, the same eyes I'd gotten lost in 1,000 times, were cold, distant, like a stranger's. Get rid of it, Jane. The words didn't even register at first. They were just sounds hanging in the damp air between us. What? An abortion. You have to get an abortion. I just stared at him, my heart fracturing. I tried to keep my voice steady, to hide the tremor of panic rising in my throat. Let me think about it. Think about what? He shot back, his voice suddenly harsh. The thing is barely a clump of cells right now. If you don't do it now, when will you? We're just college kids, Jane. We're running on fumes, begging our parents for grocery money, working shit jobs just to pay tuition. Where the hell are we going to get the money to raise a kid? A raw, ragged sound tore from my throat, a sound of pure betrayal. Don't you dare say something so irresponsible. Liam looked stunned, as if I'd slapped him. For a second, he just stared, his mouth slightly open. He took a breath, trying to rein in his anger. Jane, listen to me, he said, his voice softer but just as firm. We're not ready for this. We can't have a baby right now. Do you understand? I looked down, my hands instinctively going to my flat stomach. A long, heavy silence stretched between us. Finally, I whispered, I'll go by myself. No, he said, his voice firm. I'm taking you. I won't let you go alone. Early that afternoon, Liam drove me to the clinic. After the paperwork was filled out, I watched him from the doorway, his shoulders slumped in the waiting room. As he saw me walk toward the procedure room, a wave of relief washed over his face, so visible it was like he'd just shed a 50-pound weight. It was a look that would haunt me for years. Inside, the room was cold and sterile. The doctor, a woman with kind but weary eyes, looked at my chart. Have you thought this through, honey? She asked gently. You understand that with your medical history, a procedure like this, it carries a significant risk. There's a chance you might not be able to get pregnant again. Her words hit me like a physical blow. My hands flew to my stomach, clutching the thin fabric of my t-shirt. I looked at her, my eyes wide with terror. I was an orphan. I'd grown up in a home, adopted by a wonderful but infertile couple who had given me everything. I knew, deep in my bones, what it felt like to be unwanted, and the thought of never being able to have a child of my own, it was a future I couldn't bear. No, I whispered, my voice trembling. Never mind. I'm not doing it. I bolted from the room, my heart hammering against my ribs, but as my hand touched the cool metal of the exit door, I froze. I pictured Liam's face, the anger, the frustration, the sheer panic in his eyes when he'd find out I hadn't gone through with it. I couldn't face him, not yet. I turned back, my steps heavy. The doctor was watching me with a knowing, sad look in her eyes. Can I just stay in here for a little while? I asked, my voice barely audible. Of course, she said, gesturing to a chair in the corner. Take all the time you need. I sank into the chair, my mind racing. How could I tell him? How could I explain that this tiny, unseen life inside me had already taken root in my heart? I couldn't become a cold-blooded mother, the kind who snuffs out her own child's existence. I couldn't do to my baby what had been done to me, being thrown away. The maternal instinct, the one I never knew I had, was a fierce, roaring fire. But Liam didn't feel it. He saw a problem, an obstacle, a burden, after what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 minutes. I stood up and walked out. Liam shot up from his chair the moment he saw me. Is it over? He asked, his voice tight with anxiety. Are you okay? I forced my face into a mask of pain, of emptiness. I let my shoulders slump. It's done, I lied, my voice a hollow whisper. I'm okay. For the next month, I played the part. I tried to be as normal as possible, hoping he wouldn't notice. But the morning sickness became a daily battle, a relentless wave of nausea that I couldn't hide forever. And then, one day, he knew. The moment he realized I had lied, that I was still pregnant, the stranger came back. What is wrong with you, Jane? He snapped, his voice laced with a cruelty I'd never heard before. He tapped his forefinger against his temple, a gesture of pure, condescending frustration. Can you use your brain for one damn second? His eyes were cold, alien. In that moment, I understood. I saw the depth of his resentment. I knew what he was angry about, so I just stood there, head bowed in silence. He went on, his voice rising with every word. My mom and your parents are broke. They scrape by just to eat. We're working our asses off, juggling classes and jobs just to pay tuition for both of us. Do you have any idea what another mouth to feed will do to us? Where's the money going to come from, Jane? I knew he was right. I knew it was logical, but my heart screamed against his logic. This was my baby, a part of me, a part of us. I lifted my head, my vision blurred with tears. We could get married, Liam, I pleaded, my voice cracking. If we get married, we can figure it out. We can find a way. Or we could send the baby to live with our parents for a while, just until we graduate. I stepped toward him, my hands reaching for his, desperate for a connection, for a sign that the boy I loved was still in there. Liam, please. But the moment my fingers touched his, he recoiled, his face twisted into something ugly. You think a wedding is that simple? He scoffed. It costs a fortune. It's not like you can just snap your fingers and have a wedding. Look, I'll marry you. I'll go down to the courthouse and sign the papers right now if that's what you want. But keeping this baby, right now, it's not an option." Hearing those words, something inside me shattered. I dropped my hands, staring at him with a dawning horror. It was all just excuses, a long, winding road of justifications that all led to one place. He didn't want this. He didn't want to be a father. He didn't want the responsibility. I didn't want to fight anymore. I wiped the tears from my face with the back of my hand, stood up straight, and walked toward him. And without a moment's hesitation, I swung my hand and slapped him hard across the face. The sound echoed in the small room, sharp and final. Liam stood there, stunned into silence, a red mark blooming on his cheek. I looked him dead in the eye, my voice as cold and hard as steel. "We're done," I said. "It's over. I guess I was a fool to trust you, you fucking coward. You just wanted to get your rocks off, and now you can't handle the consequences. If you'd just worn a condom, I wouldn't be in this mess. Who's the one not using their brain now, huh? If you want to run away, then just say it. This whole song and dance just makes me sick. It makes me despise you." Liam stared at me, his face pale with shock. Then, the shock gave way to a wounded pride, and his own anger flared to life. "Oh yeah?" he snarled, his voice trembling with rage. "And you think your parents will accept a son-in-law who can't even afford a real wedding ring? Who shows up with nothing but promises?" He was breathing hard now, the words tumbling out in a torrent of pain and frustration. "My mother and my sister were just in a car accident. I'm selling everything I own, and it's still not enough to cover the hospital bills. Do you think your parents want a son-in-law with no job, no prospects, and nowhere to live? What are we supposed to do, Jane? Get married and then live on the street begging for change?" Every word was a punch to the gut. They were spoken in anger, but I knew they were true. Yet, in my own pain, I couldn't see his. I only saw excuses, a convenient story to escape his responsibility. I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Could you come up with a more believable lie? It's obvious you just want out. So fine, we're done. Don't say another word." "This baby," I said, my hand protectively on my stomach, "has nothing to do with you anymore." The words hit him like a physical blow. He froze, his face crumpling. I could see the heartbreak in his eyes, a raw, suffocating pain. He looked like someone was squeezing the very life out of his heart. For a moment, he was a statue, his face a canvas of disbelief and agony. His eyes, now red-rimmed and glistening, fixed on me. I saw the guilt, the regret, but his pride was a wall too high to climb. "Fine," he choked out, the word barely a whisper. "We're done." It felt like an eternity passed between those two words. The air was thick with everything left unsaid, with the ghost of a plea that neither of us could voice. His pride was a fortress, and my heart was a ruin. All he could do was surrender. "Get your stuff and get out," I said, turning away so he couldn't see the fresh wave of tears streaming down my face. My voice was a cold, flat monotone. "This is my apartment. I pay the rent." He stood there for a long moment, his back to me. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet, so devoid of emotion, it chilled me to the bone. Even though I was the one who ended it, his next words broke what was left of my heart. "All right," he said, his voice strangely calm. "Breaking up is for the best. I don't think we're right for each other anyway. Forcing it would just cause more pain." He didn't wait for a reply. He bent down, carelessly shoving his clothes and books into a worn-out backpack. He moved so quickly, so decisively, that I was left speechless. I watched his back as he walked to the door, a silhouette against the gray light of the hallway. And just like that, He was gone. The coldness of the empty room seeped into my bones. The dam broke. I collapsed onto the floor, my body shaking with violent, gut-wrenching sobs. I cried for my own stupidity, for giving myself to him. I cried for loving the wrong person. I cried for the wasted years of my youth. But for him, maybe I cried a little, but my love for him wasn't big enough to make me neglect myself. Not then, only much, much later, when I was already someone else's wife, with a smile that rarely reached my eyes, did I realize how reckless I had been, how I had been so sure that I was the only one who was right. Liam had almost reached the end of the street when he stopped. His voice, carried by the wind, floated back to me, soft and calm. "If you decide to keep the baby," he said, his voice just loud enough for me to hear, "I'll send you money every month. For the pregnancy, for the birth. I hope you don't regret this, Jane. It's not that I don't want to be responsible. It's that I wanted a better future for us, for our child. I wanted our kid to have a full life, not one where we're constantly worrying about the next meal. Do you understand? We don't want the same things. I hope you find someone who can give you a better life than I ever could." I was drowning in my own tears, my ears ringing. By the time I managed to look up, his figure was just a blurry shape disappearing into the rain. That day, Liam couldn't tell the difference between the rain on his face and his own tears. All he felt was an excruciating emptiness, a soul-crushing guilt that words could never describe. That night, he got drunk under a bridge. The motorcycle he'd saved for months to buy was stolen, his biggest possession gone, just like the love he had cherished from the very beginning. And just like that, we were gone from each other's lives. No more waiting for each other after class. No more sharing cheap sandwiches and instant meals. The simple, beautiful, impoverished life of two college students in love was over. The months that followed were a blur of shame and survival. I lived in a world of whispers and sideways glances. In the university hallways, I was the girl who'd gotten herself into trouble. A cautionary tale. I felt their judgment like a physical weight, pressing down on me with every step. But for the sake of the life growing inside me, I endured it all. Liam kept his word. Every month, without fail, a deposit of $300 would appear in my bank account. No note, no message, just the cold, digital proof of his guilt or his pity or something I couldn't name. And every month, I would swallow my pride, that bitter pill, and use the money for prenatal vitamins and rent. The day my daughter was born, as I lay in the cheap hospital bed, exhausted and terrified, I found an old textbook I'd been using as a makeshift journal. Tucked between the pages was an envelope. Inside was $3,000 in crisp $100 bills, a lifesaver. For a wild, dizzying moment, my heart leaped with a crazy hope, but I quickly crushed it. He must have forgotten it, left it behind by mistake. It was the only explanation that made sense. A kindness so profound from the boy who broke me. It felt impossible. A week later, I went home. I finally made the call I'd been dreading for 9 months. I told my adoptive parents everything. I told them I was a single mother. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line, followed by the sound of my mother's weeping. They were disappointed, heartbroken, but their love for me was a force of nature, stronger than any mistake I could ever make. A few days later, my mother showed up at my door with a single, worn suitcase, her face etched with worry, but her eyes full of a fierce, unwavering resolve. She had left our small town, left my father behind, to come to the city and help me raise my child. My dad stayed back home, taking on extra work, raising chickens, doing whatever odd jobs he could find to send us a little extra money. Life became a relentless grind. I went back to school just weeks after giving birth, my daughter, Lily, sleeping in a carrier beside me during lectures. The stares were worse than ever. I was just over 20, but I felt 1,000 years old. I was surrounded by kids worried about final exams and weekend parties, while I was worried about diaper rash and finding a reliable babysitter. The idea of dating, of letting anyone into my chaotic world, was unthinkable. I worked myself to the bone. My days were a grueling marathon of classes, changing diapers, and late-night shifts at a greasy diner, followed by hours of studying when the whole world was asleep. More than once, I pushed myself so hard that I simply collapsed, fainting from sheer exhaustion. Each time it happened, I felt a little piece of my own strength chip away. I wanted to rest, just for a day, just for an hour, but my reality wouldn't allow it. And slowly, the name Liam, the boy whose ghost still lingered in the corners of my memory, began to fade, replaced by the crushing, immediate needs of the present. The only reminder of his existence was that quiet, anonymous deposit every month. More than a year passed. My daughter, Lily, was a toddler now, a bright, beautiful spark of joy in my otherwise gray existence. And then I met Nathan. He was a student from another university, and we worked at the same diner. He had a kind smile and a quiet strength that drew me in. His family lived in the city, but they were struggling, just like mine. We found a kinship in our shared circumstances, a common language in our dreams and our hardships. We just fit. But after 6 months of seeing him, of letting myself feel something again, I still hadn't told him about Lily. How could I? The fear was a cold knot in my stomach. He'd asked to come over to my tiny apartment, and I'd make up frantic excuses. My roommate's sick. The place is a total disaster. You don't want to see it. I was terrified. I had seen what the truth of a baby did to a boy I loved. I had watched him transform from my everything into a stranger. I couldn't survive that again. I just couldn't. Then, one afternoon, while I was in the middle of a history lecture, my phone buzzed with a call from my mother. I stepped out into the hallway. "Honey," she said, her voice shaking. "It's your father. There's been an accident. A car accident." The floor dropped out from under me. My mom was about to get on a bus to go back home, but then another call came. They were transferring him to the major county hospital downtown. He was being airlifted. It was bad. My world shattered. My mom and I raced to the hospital, clutching the little cash we had between us. We found him in the emergency room, and the sight of him, my strong, steady father, the man who was my rock, my anchor, covered in so much blood. It was too much. The sterile white walls of the ER started to tilt. The frantic sounds of beeping machines and urgent voices faded into a dull roar, and the world went black. The last thing I saw was my mother, her face a mask of pale, helpless horror, collapsing onto a hard plastic chair as they wheeled my father into surgery. When I woke up, the world smelled of rubbing alcohol and bleach. I was in a small, curtained-off room, the air thick with a sterile quiet. Nathan was sitting in a chair beside me, his face drawn with worry. My mother was there too, her face hollowed out, her eyes vacant. It looked like she hadn't slept in a lifetime. And then I remembered, "Mom." I choked out, a sob rising in my throat. "Dad, how is he?" I dissolved into tears, crying like a lost child. Our family had already been through so much. Why? Why was this happening? My parents had worked their fingers to the bone their entire lives to raise me. My mom had uprooted her life to come here, for me. My dad was working himself into an early grave, for me. For my daughter, it was all because of me. The guilt was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest. It's my fault, I sobbed, pounding my fist against my heart. It's all my fault. It was in that moment, drowning in despair, that Liam's words from all those years ago came back to me, sharp and clear. Where is the money going to come from, Jane? The regret, the ghost of that choice, haunted me. It wrapped its cold fingers around my soul. My mother's voice cut through my haze of pain. It was flat, lifeless. He's out of danger, honey. But, the doctor said, he might not be able to walk again. He's paralyzed. From the waist down, paralyzed. The word hung in the air, a death sentence. Not being able to walk. For a man like my father, a man who worked with his hands, who was always moving, always doing. It was like taking away his life. I stared blankly at the white ceiling, the world feeling more unreal than ever. He was crippled, and it was my fault. Nathan, who had been standing silently by the door, his own face a mask of shock, stepped forward. "Don't worry, Jane," he said, his voice a low, steady anchor in my storm. "I'm here. We'll take care of him. Together." His words were a warm current in the frozen landscape of my heart. I looked at him, and beyond the gratitude, I felt a surge of love so powerful it took my breath away. Later, I learned that the person who hit my dad's car was just as poor as we were. My parents, in their quiet, heartbreaking decency, didn't want to press charges or ruin another family. They left it to the police to handle. My life became a frantic, exhausting juggle. Between my classes, I was at home with Lily, or rushing back and forth to the hospital to help my mother care for my dad. When I had to be away, I'd leave Lily with a middle-aged woman who lived in our apartment complex, a kind soul who watched her for a few dollars an hour. Both Nathan and I had been fired from the diner for taking too much time off without permission. In the midst of the chaos, I was desperately trying to find a new job, a new daycare, anything to keep us afloat. And through it all, I still couldn't bring myself to tell Nathan about Lily. Every time we met, I had to sneak away, dropping Lily off with the neighbor, my heart pounding with the fear that he would see her, that he would find out, and that he would leave. After a week of frantic searching, I finally found a small temple, a peaceful oasis tucked away on a quiet street not far from my apartment. It was run by a serene, kind-faced nun named Sister Anne, along with a few other women who had dedicated their lives to service. It felt safe. During the long, sterile weeks my father spent in the hospital, my mother had to borrow money from every corner of our small world. Seeing her so worn down, so burdened, a thought began to take root in my mind, a dark and unwelcome weed. I should drop out of college. I needed to work, to help her, to take some of this crushing weight off her shoulders. It wasn't long before Nathan found a new job, working nights at a warehouse. In between his own classes and his grueling shifts, he'd still find time to stop by my apartment. He'd bring me food, a container of pho, a box of cum tum, simple offerings that felt like the grandest gestures of love. One evening, as we sat on the fire escape of my building, the city lights twinkling below us, I finally confessed my plan to him. I think I'm going to quit school," I said, the words tasting like ashes in my mouth. Nathan looked at me, his brow furrowed with concern. "Why would you do that, Jane? Why would you even think that?" My eyes welled up with tears. "I need to help my mom," I whispered, my voice thick with unshed grief. She's drowning. I have to help her. Okay, he said, his voice calm and steady. Okay, but you don't have to quit. Why don't you just apply to defer your studies for a semester? Take a leave of absence. You can file the paperwork, take some time off to help your family, and then, when your dad is out of the hospital, you can go back. You don't have to throw it all away. His words were like a light switching on in a dark room. Graduating from college wasn't just a goal. It was a promise I had made to myself, to my parents. I had sworn that no matter what, I would finish. I would make something of myself. Hearing Nathan's simple, practical solution, a wave of relief washed over me. The next day, I went to the registrar's office and filed the paperwork to put my studies on hold. A few weeks later, my father was finally discharged. The cramped, stuffy apartment was no place for a man in his condition, so my mother decided to take him back home to the countryside. The air was cleaner there, she said. It would be better for him. With my mother gone, I made a decision. I took Lily to the temple and asked Sister Anne if she could stay there for a while. It broke my heart to do it, but I knew she would be safer, better cared for than she would be with me, trying to juggle a full-time job and the constant fear of being discovered. Nathan became my rock. He was the one person I could share my fears and my frustrations with. But the secret of Lily was a wall between us, a wall I was too terrified to tear down. The fear of being abandoned again, of seeing that same look of cold rejection in his eyes that I had seen in Liam's, was a constant, suffocating presence. Then, one evening, my mother called, her voice frantic, hysterical. "They're destroying everything, Jane. They're tearing the house apart." "What?" "Mom, slow down," I said, my own heart beginning to hammer against my ribs. "What are you talking about? Who is?" "The loan sharks," she sobbed into the phone. "To pay for your father's hospital bills. I had to borrow money. It was a lot, and now, they say with the interest, we owe them $20,000. They're going to kill us, Jane. They're going to kill your father." The blood drained from my face. "How much did you borrow, Mom? How much was the original loan?" $10,000, she whispered, her voice barely audible. $10,000 had doubled in less than 6 months. It was monstrous, inhumane. "What are we going to do?" she wailed. "They come here every day. Your father. He can't take this stress. He won't survive it." "Okay, Mom, listen to me," I said, trying to keep my own panic at bay. "I'll figure something out. For now, take Dad and go to Aunt Carol's house. Stay there and be careful." "I will, honey. You be careful too." As soon as I hung up, I collapsed onto the floor, my body trembling. For the rest of the afternoon, I called everyone I knew, begging for money, but it was useless. I thought about calling Nathan, but I couldn't. I couldn't burden him with this. Finally, with no other options left, I decided to go to the temple. I needed to see Lily, and I needed to ask Sister Anne for help. The temple was quiet, the air thick with the scent of incense. I stood by the entrance for a long time, my legs feeling like they were made of lead, before I finally found the courage to step inside. "Hello, sister," I said, my voice soft. Is Lily behaving?" Lily, who had been playing with some other children in a corner, looked up at the sound of my voice. A huge, toothy grin spread across her face. "Mama," she squealed, toddling towards me on her unsteady little legs. As she ran into my arms, I saw it. For the first time, I saw it with a painful, heart-stopping clarity. She was the spitting image of Liam. The same dark eyes, the same curve of his smile. A wave of sorrow, so sharp and sudden, it almost knocked me off my feet, washed over me. Sister Anne approached me, her eyes full of a gentle concern. Is something wrong, my child? She asked, her voice like a soothing balm. You always look like you're on the verge of tears. Why do you hold it all in? Her kindness was my undoing. The dam I had so carefully constructed inside myself finally broke. The grief, the fear, the exhaustion, the years of repressed pain, it all came pouring out in a torrent of uncontrollable sobs. I told her everything. About Liam, about my foolish first love, about my father's accident, about the loan sharks, about the crushing weight of it all. I confess that I had never, not for one single moment, felt a shred of gratitude towards Liam. In my mind, he was the source of all my suffering. I had never regretted keeping my child, but leaving him. That felt like the only right decision I had ever made. Sister Anne listened patiently, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. When I was finished, she simply squeezed my hand, her touch a silent offering of comfort and understanding. After a long moment, I finally wiped my eyes, a faint, watery smile touching my lips. I felt lighter, as if I had shed a heavy, invisible skin. But then, the thought of my mother's debt returned, and the cold hand of fear squeezed my heart once more. I took a deep breath, swallowing my pride. Sister, I said, my voice trembling, can you lend me some money? I swear I'll pay you back, every single cent. She looked at me with a deep, profound sadness in her eyes. My child, she said, her voice full of a gentle regret. It is not that I will not, it is that I cannot. If I had it, I would give it to you in a heartbeat. She paused, then gently patted my hand again. Everything will be all right, she said, her voice a soft reassurance. You will find a way. I could see the genuine sorrow in her eyes, and I didn't want to make her feel any worse. I quickly changed the subject. I've deferred my studies, I told her, a fresh wave of regret washing over me. I was doing so well in school, even with everything else, but I had to. And thanks to Nathan, I wouldn't have to give up on my dream forever. That is a wise decision, Sister Anne said, her gaze shifting to where Lily was playing. Perhaps you should leave her here for a while longer. It is safer. You are out so late, and it is difficult for you to pick her up and drop her off. Here, she will be well cared for. Her words sent a chill down my spine. The loan sharks. I didn't know when they might find me. If I was alone, I could run, I could hide. But with Lily, the thought of what they might do to her, of where they might take her, the possibilities were too horrific to even contemplate. A knot of terror tightened in my stomach. You're right, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Please, keep her here for me. Just until I can pay back the debt, then I'll come for her. Sister Anne smiled, a gentle, reassuring expression. The sun has set, she said. Stay here with us tonight. Rest. That night, they made a space for me in the main prayer hall, on a thin mat on the floor. Lily was curled up beside me, along with a few other small children, most of them orphans, left on the temple's doorstep. As I watched their small chests rise and fall in the soft moonlight, I remembered what Sister Anne had told me. The temple survived on the charity of strangers, donations of rice, milk, a few dollars here and there. It was just enough to keep these children fed and healthy. Sometimes, childless couples would come, seeking to adopt. A child would leave, and another would arrive. It was a cycle of sorrow and hope. The night was filled with the sound of crickets and the rustle of leaves in the wind. I lay awake for hours, my mind a chaotic whirlwind of fear and regret. Lily stirred in her sleep, her small body instinctively snuggling closer to mine. And then, his voice echoed in my memory, as clear as if he were standing right beside me. "I hope you don't regret this, Jane. I wanted our kid to have a full life, not one where we're constantly worrying about the next meal." Tears streamed silently down my face, soaking the thin pillow beneath my head. Was this regret? Was I regretting not listening to him? The thought was a sharp, stabbing pain in my heart. No, a voice inside me screamed. I will never regret her. Never. "You must not think so much," a soft voice said from the darkness. It was Sister Anne. She was lying on a mat across from me. "There will be a solution. You must be strong. For your daughter, what will she do without her mother?" I wiped my tears and turned to face her. "I'm fine, sister," I whispered. "Please, go to sleep." I turned back, closing my eyes, willing sleep to come. But it was a fitful, restless night, and it wasn't until the first hints of dawn streaked the sky that I finally drifted off. The clattering of pots and pans from the kitchen roused me from my shallow sleep. Lily was still fast asleep, so I carefully slipped out from under the thin blanket and went to help the sisters prepare the morning meal. By the time we were finished, the roosters were crowing, heralding the start of a new day. I stepped outside into the cool morning air, the mist clinging to the ground. It was time to go. I had to get back to my apartment before 7. Nathan would be coming by to pick me up, to help me look for a new job, and I couldn't bear the thought of him asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. As I passed by the sleeping mats, I paused, looking down at my daughter. She was sleeping so peacefully, one tiny thumb tucked into her mouth. I couldn't resist. I pulled out my old, cracked phone, quietly lifted the edge of the mosquito net, and snapped a picture of her, setting it as my phone's wallpaper. I leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her cheek, a silent goodbye. I stood there for a long moment, my heart aching with a love so fierce it was almost painful. Then, with a heavy sigh, I turned and walked away. On my way back, I stopped at a street vendor to buy 2 banh mi sandwiches, one for me and one for Nathan. As I was waiting, a young couple on a rickety old bicycle pulled up beside me. They were dressed in simple, worn clothes, but their faces shone with a love that was as bright and clear as the morning sun. "How many do you want, honey?" the boy asked, his voice full of a gentle affection. The girl pouted playfully. "Seriously? You're asking me that when I'm the one who buys you your underwear?" The boy just laughed. A bright, carefree sound. "Just one for me, please," he said to the vendor. He turned back to the girl with a sheepish grin, and she looked at him with an expression of such pure, unadulterated adoration that it took my breath away. I watched them, my eyes filling with tears. I remembered a time when Liam and I had that, a time of simple, uncomplicated happiness, a time before everything had fallen apart. "Hey, are you buying this or not?" The vendor's sharp voice snapped me out of my reverie. "Oh, yes, I'm sorry," I stammered, fumbling in my pocket for some cash. I paid for the sandwiches and hurried back to my apartment. I had only been back for a few minutes when I heard the sound of Nathan's motorcycle outside. "Hurry up," he said, a gentle smile on his face. "Let's go find you a job." "Did you eat breakfast yet?" I asked, holding out one of the sandwiches. "I got you one." "You shouldn't have," he said, but he took it from me, his fingers brushing against mine. "You should be saving your money for your parents." I smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. As I climbed onto the back of his motorcycle, I wrapped my arms around his waist, resting my head against his strong back. "It's not that much," I said softly. "Every little bit counts," he replied. "I know," I said. "Next time, I'll just buy one, and we can split it. Okay?" "Okay," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. We drove around for what felt like hours, until we finally saw a help wanted sign in the window of a bustling restaurant. "You go on in," I said, hopping off the bike. "I'll just go ask. If they let me start right away, I will. If not, I'll just grab a cab and go home." "All right," he said. "Call me if you need anything." He drove off, and I stood there for a moment, watching until his motorcycle disappeared around a corner. Then, I took a deep breath and walked inside. The manager, a harried-looking woman with a pen stuck behind her ear, lit up when she saw me. "Are you here for the server job?" she asked, practically vibrating with a frantic energy. "Yes," I said. "Can you start today? Right now? We are so swamped." "Sure," I said, a little taken aback. "I can start now." Before I could blink, she was pulling me towards a back room, shoving a uniform into my hands and pushing me towards a changing stall. By the time I emerged, the restaurant was packed, a chaotic symphony of clattering dishes, shouting orders, and hungry customers. I had waited tables before, so I quickly fell into the familiar rhythm of the work. The day flew by in a blur of taking orders, refilling drinks, and clearing tables. It was after 10 o'clock when I finally walked out of the restaurant, my feet aching but my spirits high. Nathan was there, waiting for me, and I ran to him, a wide, tired smile on my face. What I didn't know was that someone else was there too. Liam. He had been driving by when he saw me, a flash of familiar in the bustling cityscape. He had followed us, an invisible shadow, as we drove back to my apartment. He watched as I said goodnight to Nathan, expecting me to go inside. But I didn't. After Nathan was gone, I walked down the dark, narrow alleyway beside my building. Puzzled, Liam followed me. He watched as I slipped through the gates of the small temple, and a few moments later, he heard it, the sound of a child crying, and then my voice, soft and soothing, hushing her back to sleep. He stood there for a long time, hidden in the shadows, unable to tear himself away. The next morning, I woke up early and sent Nathan a text, telling him he didn't need to pick me up for work anymore. I spent a little time with Lily, then headed to the restaurant. I was so caught up in the rhythm of my new life, so focused on just getting through the day, that I truly believed I would never see Liam again. I was wiping down a table when I heard the manager's voice, bright and cheerful. "Liam, it's been so long. You look great, so handsome." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Liam. The name I tried so hard to forget, even in my dreams. I told myself it was just a coincidence, a common name, but a morbid curiosity got the better of me. I turned around, and there he was. Our eyes met across the crowded restaurant, and for a heart-stopping moment, the world stood still. My mind went completely blank. All I could do was turn away, my heart hammering against my ribs, and pretend I hadn't seen him. A few minutes later, the manager clapped her hands, her voice ringing out over the din of the restaurant. "Everyone, gather round." We all lined up, a motley crew of servers and cooks, and to my absolute horror, when I looked up, Liam was standing not 5 feet away from me. I had deliberately chosen a spot where I thought I would be out of his line of sight, but somehow he had ended up right in front of me. I shot him a quick, panicked glance, then quickly looked away, but he didn't. His eyes were fixed on me, and I could feel the weight of his gaze, a heavy, uncomfortable pressure. "Everyone," the manager announced, her voice full of a proud excitement, "I'd like you to meet the new general manager of our restaurant, Mr. Liam Stone." A wave of shock rippled through the staff. They looked at him with a mixture of awe and admiration. He was young, handsome, and now he was their boss. He was a world away from the lanky, broke college kid with the messy hair and worn-out jeans I remembered. He had the same face, but the confidence, the authority, it was like he was wearing a different skin. The female staff, in particular, were practically swooning. I just frowned, my eyes narrowing into a sharp, resentful glare. Life was so unfair. He had lived so irresponsibly, and yet here he was, thriving, while I, who had tried so hard to do the right thing, was drowning. Liam stepped forward, a polite, professional smile on his face. "I used to work here a few years ago," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Some of you might remember me, so I won't waste your time with a long introduction. From now on, I'll be managing the day-to-day operations. It's good to be back." Everyone applauded. I just clapped half-heartedly, my eyes fixed on the floor. I didn't want to look at him. As soon as we were dismissed, I practically ran to the other side of the restaurant, putting as much distance between us as possible. But I could feel his eyes on me, following my every move. Deep down, in a place he rarely acknowledged, he had never wanted to hurt me. Liam settled into his new role, his office a small, glass-walled space in the corner of the restaurant that gave him a clear view of everything. He was the manager, but he didn't interfere much. The restaurant was a well-oiled machine. His real focus was on finishing his graduate thesis. He was planning to study abroad, to put even more distance between himself and his past. The afternoon rush began, and the restaurant filled with the familiar chaos. I tried to lose myself in the work, to focus on anything other than the fact that he was there, just a few feet away, watching me, but it was impossible. His presence was a constant, unnerving hum in the back of my mind. At 10 o'clock that night, as the last of the staff were leaving, I ducked into the restroom. When I came out, he was there, leaning against the wall, waiting for me. My first instinct was to run, to push past him and pretend he didn't exist. But he was too quick. He reached out and grabbed my wrist. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice a low, urgent plea. I took a deep breath, then yanked my hand away. "We have nothing to talk about," I said, my voice as cold and sharp as ice. He flinched, but he didn't back down. "Don't you think we do?" he said, his eyes searching mine. "We have a daughter, Jane." A bitter, humorless laugh escaped my lips. "That child has my last name," I spat, "and she doesn't have a father like you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a boyfriend. As far as I'm concerned, you're in the past. So don't be so shameless as to keep chasing after me. You pathetic excuse for a man." I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, stunned into silence. Outside, Nathan was waiting. "Jane," he called out, his voice a welcome sound in the sudden quiet of the night. Inside, Liam felt something inside him shatter. The guilt, the regret, the pain he had carried for a year. It all came rushing back, a tidal wave of self-loathing. As I walked away from him, a single, silent tear traced a path down his cheek. He had never felt so useless, so utterly powerless. He followed me outside, his eyes never leaving me. He watched as I ran to Nathan, as I stood on my tiptoes and kissed him on the cheek. He saw the easy affection between us, the comfortable intimacy of two people in love, and in that moment, he felt a pain so profound it was like his heart was being ripped from his chest. The words he wanted to say, "Let's get back together, Jane," died on his lips. There was no chance, not anymore. A sleek, black car pulled up to the curb, but Liam didn't get in. He just stood there, watching as Nathan drove me away. "Sir?" his driver asked, his voice full of a gentle concern. Should we follow them? Or should we go home? Follow them, Liam said, his voice a hoarse whisper. The black car followed at a discreet distance, a silent shadow trailing the small motorcycle as it weaved through the city's late-night traffic. He watched as Nathan dropped me off in front of my apartment building. Saw us talk for a long time, a quiet conversation illuminated by the single, buzzing streetlight. When Nathan finally drove away, Liam didn't move. He sat there, a knot of something dark and heavy tightening in his chest. He saw me disappear into the shadows of the alleyway, then reappear a moment later with my old, rickety bicycle. He watched as I pedaled away, my small figure disappearing into the oppressive darkness of the unlit streets. The driver, a kind, middle-aged man named Tony, kept the car a safe distance behind. The headlights dimmed. We drove into a part of the city that seemed forgotten, where the streetlights were few and far between. Finally, my bicycle came to a stop in front of the small temple. Tony parked the car down the street, and Liam got out, his heart pounding a strange, erratic rhythm. He crept along the fence line, crouching in the shadows, his eyes fixed on the dimly lit window of the main hall. And then he heard it again, the sound of a child crying, a thin, plaintive wail that cut through the stillness of the night. "It's okay, Lily, it's okay," he heard my voice, a soft, soothing murmur. "Mama's here. Have some milk, my sweet girl." The crying subsided, replaced by the soft sounds of a mother comforting her child. Through the thin curtain, Liam could see my silhouette, a small, slender figure holding an even smaller one. The image burned itself into his mind. The night grew colder. Mosquitoes whined in the humid air, but Liam didn't move. He remained crouched in the darkness, a silent, unseen sentinel, his gaze locked on the window where a single light still burned. "Liam, we should go," Tony said softly, coming up behind him and placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "It's starting to rain." Liam barely registered the words. He was lost in a world of regret and what-ifs. It was only when the first fat drops of rain began to fall, plastering his thin shirt to his skin, that he finally snapped out of his trance. "You go ahead, Tony," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'll be there in a minute." The drizzle turned into a downpour, the rain coming down in sheets, accompanied by flashes of lightning and the distant rumble of thunder. But Liam didn't move. He stood there, letting the cold rain soak him to the bone, his eyes never leaving the window. It wasn't until the light inside finally went out that he turned and walked back to the car. Inside, the silence was heavy, broken only by the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers and the drumming of the rain on the roof. Liam stared out at the blurry, water-streaked world, his face a mask of profound, unutterable sadness. The storm outside was a mirror of the one raging inside his own heart. The next morning, in a sprawling, opulent villa on the other side of the city, Liam sat at a long, polished dining table. Across from him were two women. One was his older sister, Clara, a woman with a kind, intelligent face and an air of quiet authority. The other was his younger sister, Amelia, her bright, youthful face clouded with a sadness that seemed too heavy for her slender shoulders to bear. "So," Clara said, her voice gentle, "how are things with her?" Liam forced a smile, a brittle, unconvincing thing. "It's fine, Clara," he said, his voice unnaturally light. "Everything's fine. Are you mentally prepared to go abroad?" "I'm always ready," he said, the lie tasting like ash in his mouth. "Take me with you, Liam." Amelia chimed in, her voice a sudden, desperate plea. "I can cook for you. I can take care of you." Liam reached across the table and ruffled her hair, his expression softening with a genuine affection. "Since when do you know how to cook?" he teased. "I do," she insisted, a faint blush rising in her cheeks. "I'm just not as good as Mom was." The mention of their mother hung in the air, a sudden, heavy silence. Amelia's eyes welled up with tears. Liam's own heart clenched with a familiar, searing pain. "Mom is watching over you from heaven," Clara said softly, her own voice thick with emotion. "She's protecting you." The car accident had taken so much from them. It had taken their mother. It had taken Amelia's ability to walk, confining her to a wheelchair and shattering her dreams of becoming a dancer. And it had, in a way, taken Liam too, leaving behind a hollowed-out version of the happy, carefree boy he had once been. After breakfast, Liam said his goodbyes and left the villa. He didn't want to take the car today. He took Clara's scooter instead, the wind whipping through his hair as he drove to the university. After a few hours in the library, he headed to the restaurant to work on his thesis. Since learning I had a new love in my life, he had been careful to avoid me. He kept his distance, his interactions with me brief and professional, but he still watched me, his gaze following me as I moved through the restaurant. A silent, constant ache in his chest. A few days later, he saw him, Nathan. He came to the restaurant to pick me up for lunch, and Liam recognized him immediately. He was the golden boy of the university, the one who had won the prestigious scholarship to study in France. Liam watched as I fussed over him, straightening his collar, brushing a stray eyelash from his cheek. He saw the way I looked at him, my eyes shining with a love and a trust that he had thrown away. And in that moment, Liam felt a piece of his own soul die. He saw his future, and it was a bleak, empty landscape. His daughter would grow up calling another man Dad. The woman he loved would have other children, a new family, a life in which he was nothing more than a ghost, a forgotten name. A few days after that, just as the morning rush was beginning, I walked up to his desk. "I want to quit," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. No polite greeting, no small talk, just the words he had been dreading. It's too uncomfortable," I continued, my eyes fixed on a spot on the wall behind him. "Seeing you every day, and if my boyfriend doesn't like it." My words, so casually delivered, were like 1,000 tiny cuts to his heart. He felt a wave of despair so profound, it was like he was drowning. But he couldn't let me see it. He couldn't let me see how much he was breaking. He kept his eyes fixed on his laptop screen, his voice a cool, professional monotone. "Fine," he said. "Talk to the manager after your shift to settle your final paycheck. You'll be quitting without notice, so you won't be receiving this month's bonus. You can go now." He didn't look up. He couldn't. I turned and walked away. A small part of me, a foolish, hopeful part, had thought he might try to stop me, that he might say something, anything. But he hadn't. That night, after I had received my final pay and walked out of the restaurant for the last time, Liam finally allowed himself to feel it, the crushing weight of his loss. He realized, with a devastating clarity, that he wasn't strong at all. His eyes burned with unshed tears. I was half of his life, and I had just walked away, taking his heart with me. He was drowning in a sea of regret, haunted by the memory of one single, foolish, angry moment that had cost him everything. He got on his scooter and followed us, keeping a safe distance. He watched as Nathan dropped me off in front of my apartment building, not the temple, and a seed of suspicion began to take root in his mind. Why hadn't he taken me all the way? Why had he left me here, in the dark, He was so lost in his own troubled thoughts that he almost didn't see me walk away, my small figure disappearing down the dark street. He quickly started his scooter and followed. He was a few blocks away when he heard my voice, sharp with terror. "What do you want?" I'll scream right now." He rounded the corner and saw them. A group of rough-looking men surrounding me, their faces menacing in the dim light. "When are you gonna pay up, little girl?" one of them snarled, his voice a low, gravelly growl. "You're way past due. I'll pay you when I have the money." I shot back, my voice trembling but defiant. "No money?" the man said, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "Then we'll just have to burn down that little temple of yours. Or maybe we'll just sell that pretty little daughter of yours to pay off the debt." The mention of Lily ignited a fire in me, a primal, maternal rage. "You sick bastards!" I screamed, and like a woman possessed, I threw myself at them, my fists flying, my nails scratching. "Help me. Somebody help, boss," one of the other men said, a leering grin on his face. "Why waste our time with this bitch? Let's just grab her and sell her to a brothel. A girl as pretty as this will fetch a high price." The words sent a wave of pure, ice-cold terror through me. In the depths of my fear, I screamed his name. "Nathan, Nathan, help me. Somebody please help me." Before I could finish the sentence, a sharp blow to the back of my head sent me spiraling into darkness. The last thing I heard, or thought I heard, was a familiar voice calling my name, Jane. It was a voice from a lifetime ago, a voice I thought I'd never hear again. And in that last, fleeting moment of consciousness, I convinced myself it was Nathan. That night, County General Hospital admitted 2 emergency cases. One was a young man, severely beaten, his face a swollen, bruised mess, a nasty gash bleeding on his forehead. The doctors diagnosed him with severe soft tissue trauma. The other was a young woman who was, physically, mostly unharmed, save for a few scrapes. She had simply fainted from the shock and the blow. The young man was Liam, the young woman was me, and the person who brought us both to the emergency room, the hero of the hour, was Nathan. As they wheeled us into separate treatment areas, a young doctor stopped him. "What's your relation to them?" the doctor asked, his voice tired but efficient. Nathan looked from Liam's unconscious form to mine, his face a mask of carefully constructed concern. He paused for just a second, a flicker of calculation in his eyes. "She's my girlfriend," he said, gesturing towards me. "The guy? I have no idea who he is. I just found them both lying in the street." The doctor nodded and hurried away. Nathan walked back to my room and sat by my bedside, playing the part of the worried boyfriend. But as soon as the nurses were gone, he moved with a cold, quiet efficiency. He reached into Liam's pocket, pulled out his phone, turned it off, and slipped it into his own jacket. Then he took my phone, walked out of the hospital, and found a deserted payphone down the block. He dialed my mother's number. In a small house hundreds of miles away, my mother, Helen, was woken from a restless sleep by the shrill ring of the phone. It was almost 2 a.m. A call at this hour could only mean one thing. Her hand trembled as she picked up the receiver, a silent prayer on her lips. "Hello, is this Jane's mother?" a young man's voice asked. "Yes." "Who is this?" "Ma'am, there's been an accident. Your daughter Jane, she's been hurt. You need to come to County General Hospital right away." The world tilted on its axis. "Who is this? How do you have this number?" she asked, her voice rising in panic. "It's Nathan. I'm Jane's boyfriend. She's in the emergency room. When they brought her in, she was covered in blood. "You need to come now." The lie was delivered with a perfect, convincing urgency. My mother's heart stopped. She couldn't form words. All she could hear was the blood rushing in her ears. Covered in blood. The image seared itself into her mind. Is it bad? She finally managed to choke out. "They're taking care of her," Nathan said, his voice a carefully modulated performance of concern. "But you should get here as soon as you can." The moment she hung up, a frantic, primal terror took over. She threw some clothes into a bag, her hands shaking so violently she could barely zip it. She grabbed the little bit of emergency cash she kept in a tin box under the bed. All she could think was that she had to get to me. She had to get to the city. Just as she was about to run out the door, her neighbors, the kindly couple who had been her lifeline since my father's accident, heard the commotion and came over. "Helen, what on earth is going on?" Aunt Carol asked, her face etched with alarm. "It's Jane," my mother cried, her voice cracking. "She's been in an accident. I have to go." Okay, calm down," Uncle Ben said, his voice a steady, grounding presence. He gently took her by the shoulders. "Just take a breath, Helen. It's the middle of the night. Where are you going to go? There are no buses running at this hour." "But he said, the boy who called, he said I have to come now." "Who called?" Carol asked, her eyes narrowing with a shrewd suspicion. "Are you sure it's real? There are so many scams these days, Helen. People preying on old folks." "No, it was her boyfriend. Nathan," he said. "Are you sure you can trust him?" Carol pressed gently. "Just wait until morning. Ben will take you to the bus station first thing. It's not safe for you to be out there alone at this hour." Their calm, rational voices slowly penetrated the thick fog of my mother's panic. She knew they were right, but the fear, the terrible, clawing fear for her child, was a physical thing, a sickness in the pit of her stomach. She let them lead her back inside, but she didn't sleep a wink. She just sat in the darkness, staring at the wall, her heart a tangled knot of terror and prayer, waiting for the long, agonizing night to end. Back at the hospital, while my mother was being tormented by his lies, Nathan was putting the next piece of his plan into motion. Before I woke up, he took my phone and hid it, just as he had done with Liam's. Then, to make his story more convincing, he took a small, sharp piece of metal he found on the floor and carefully, deliberately, made a shallow cut on his own wrist, just enough to draw blood, just enough to make him look like a hero who had been wounded in the act of saving his love. He was setting the stage, transforming me into a damsel in distress, so deeply in his debt that I would never question him. He was turning me into a moth, drawn to a flame that I believed was the most beautiful, perfect light in the world, a flame that was, in reality, destined to burn me alive. By the time my mother and Aunt Carol finally arrived at the bus station in the city, I had been given a sleeping pill by Nathan. He told the nurse I was agitated and couldn't rest. I was in a deep, dreamless sleep, oblivious to the world. Liam, meanwhile, had regained consciousness just as the sun was rising. The first thing he did was ask the nurse for his phone. He needed to call his sister. The nurse checked, but of course, there was no phone. Liam, his head pounding, gave her Clara's number. An hour later, she arrived, her face pale with shock and worry. "Liam! My God, what happened to you?" she cried, rushing to his bedside. "1 minute you're fine, and the next you're in the hospital." I was so worried. He tried to smile, but it was more of a grimace. "It was just an incident, Clara. Don't worry." "An incident?" You look like you went 10 rounds with a heavyweight boxer. Should I call the police? No, he said, shaking his head. It's not necessary. It was worth it, Clara sighed, her frustration warring with her relief. All right, you stay here and rest. I'm going to go get you something to eat. As soon as she was gone, Liam's mind replayed the events of the previous night. The raw, primal fear on my face. The brutal, casual cruelty of those men. He still couldn't believe he had done it. He didn't even know where the courage, the reckless, selfless bravery had come from. In that moment, seeing me in danger, he hadn't thought. He had just acted. He had thrown himself into a fight he knew he couldn't win, armed with nothing but a desperate, foolish love. A nurse came in to change his IV drip. "Excuse me," he said, his voice hoarse. "The girl who was brought in with me last night. Do you know how she is? The young woman in the next room?" The nurse replied, her voice brisk and professional. "She's fine. Her boyfriend is with her now." Boyfriend. The word landed like a punch to the gut. Liam's face fell. He took a deep breath, pushing the pain down. My phone and wallet," he said, changing the subject. "And my ID. Did you see them when I was brought in?" "I'm sorry," she said, shaking her head. "You were brought in alone. There were no personal effects with you." She paused, a thoughtful look on her face. "Was there a lot of money in your wallet?" "About $100, he said. "Well," she said with a sympathetic sigh, "if there was, it's probably long gone. You can check the area where the incident happened. Sometimes people find the empty wallet and just throw it away." She hesitated for a moment, then added, "The man who brought you in, I think his name was Nathan. He's the girl's boyfriend. Maybe you could ask him." As soon as she left, Liam carefully, painfully, pulled himself out of bed. He stood in the hallway for a long moment, his hand on the doorframe of my room, before he finally stepped inside. He stopped dead in his tracks. Nathan was there, sitting by my bed, gently stroking my hair. He was looking at me with an expression of such tender affection that it made Liam's stomach churn. And then, as Liam watched, a strange, cold look flickered across Nathan's face. A look that was gone in an instant, but it was enough. It was a look that made the hair on the back of Liam's neck stand on end. Nathan stood up, and Liam quickly stepped back out into the hallway, not wanting me to see him. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Liam asked as Nathan emerged from the room. Nathan's expression was perfectly composed, a mask of polite indifference. "Sure," he said. When you brought me in last night," Liam began, his voice hesitant, "did you happen to see my wallet?" Nathan's brow furrowed, a flicker of carefully feigned annoyance in his eyes. "Are you suggesting I took it?" No, of course not," Liam said quickly. I was hoping you might have seen it." "Look," Nathan said, his voice sharp and dismissive. "I found you and Jane lying in the middle of the street. The last thing on my mind was your wallet." He turned and walked away, his back ramrod straight, leaving Liam standing there, a profound sense of unease settling over him. He knew, with a certainty that he couldn't explain, that something was very, very wrong. As Nathan walked out of the hospital's main entrance, a rundown sedan pulled up to the curb. The driver, a man with a brutish face and a nasty scar above his eyebrow, leaned over and opened the passenger door. This was Mark, the leader of the loan sharks, and, as it happened, Nathan's uncle. "So, what now?" Mark grunted as Nathan slid into the seat beside him. "We go to the other hospital. We're going to stage a robbery." Mark let out a low whistle. "Damn, kid, you've got ice in your veins. I've been with the boss for years, and even I don't have the stomach for some of the shit you pull. You look like some clean-cut college boy, but on the inside. "Just drive," Nathan snapped, cutting him off. "And for the record, this is the last time I'm doing this with you. Once I'm successful, don't you ever try to claim me as your nephew. I don't want the world knowing I'm related to a low-life debt collector." Yeah, I know. You're a genius," Mark grumbled, pulling away from the curb. They drove to County General, the hospital where Nathan had told my mother I was. He had described her perfectly to Mark, a small, frail-looking woman, probably wearing her best, slightly worn-out church clothes. A woman who looked like she didn't belong in the big city, an easy target. My mother, Helen, had been wandering the halls of the massive hospital for hours, her heart a cold knot of dread. No one had heard of a Jane Miller. There was no record of me being admitted. Just as Aunt Carol had predicted, they had been scammed. Defeated and heartbroken, they decided to go home. They didn't even have enough money left for 2 bus tickets back. It was on their way out of the hospital, as they were trying to figure out what to do, that Mark and his men, posing as helpful strangers, approached them. They saw 2 old, frightened women, lost and vulnerable. 30 minutes later, my mother and Aunt Carol were left on a deserted street corner, their purses, their IDs, and the last of their money gone. That day, Nathan made a total of $1,600, $100 from Liam's wallet, and $1,500 from the staged robbery of my mother. He hadn't even broken a sweat. That evening, when Nathan returned to the small, dilapidated house he shared with his uncle and his younger sister, he found Mark sprawled on the couch, surrounded by empty beer cans and takeout containers. The place stank of stale food and cheap booze. "You're over 40 years old," Nathan sneered, his voice dripping with disgust. "Could you at least try to live like a human being?" Mark shot up from the couch, his face contorted with rage. "I'm your uncle, you ungrateful little shit," he roared. Nathan just stood there, his hands clenched into tight fists, his face a mask of cold fury. "Then act like one," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "And stop making me ashamed of you." He turned and stalked into his room, slamming the door behind him. Mark stood there, trembling with a mixture of anger and a strange, grudging respect. "Damn kid," he muttered to himself, "thinks he's better than everyone. One of these days, I'm gonna see you fall, and I'm gonna laugh." A few minutes later, Nathan emerged from his room, his expression unreadable. "That night," he said, his voice calm, "with the girl. What was that all about?" Mark looked at him, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. "What night?" "The night you and your thugs were roughing up my girlfriend." Mark's eyes widened in recognition. "Oh, that. Yeah. Some random asshole jumped in and started a fight." "How do you know her, anyway? She's got a kid, you know." He paused, a slow, dawning realization spreading across his face. "Wait a minute. Don't tell me you didn't know." Nathan's jaw tightened. A kid? Jane had a kid. He remembered that night with a chilling clarity. He'd forgotten his phone in my bag and had been on his way back to get it when he saw them. His own uncle and his crew, menacing a young woman in the darkness. He had been about to intervene, to play the hero, when he overheard their conversation. A daughter, a debt, and in that moment, something inside him had shifted. The desire to save me had vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating opportunism. He had watched from the shadows as Liam, a complete stranger, had thrown himself into the fray. He had waited until they were both lying unconscious on the ground. Then he had calmly walked over, taken Liam's wallet and phone, and then, and only then, had he run for help. "Tell me everything you know about her," Nathan said, his voice a low, dangerous command. Mark, now understanding the game, leaned back, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Her mother owes my boss a lot of money, he said. When she couldn't pay, we went after the daughter. Simple as that. And the baby? A little girl, about a year old. Don't tell me you're that clueless. Nathan's silence was more unnerving than any outburst. A strange, calculating look had come over his face. Has she seen your face? He asked, his voice sharp. Does she know who you are? Mark thought for a moment. Probably. It was a bright night, and my voice, it's pretty distinctive. Then you need to disappear for a while, Nathan said. Lay low. I'll find a way to get you some money. Mark stared at him, a flicker of something that might have been pity in his cold eyes. She's your girlfriend, kid. Do you have to be so ruthless? Nathan's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. I despise liars, he said, his voice trembling with a long-suppressed rage. Especially women who lie. You remember my mother, don't you? That cheating whore. My father died because of her. She's the reason I grew up without a dad. The story was a dark, ugly stain on their family's history. Nathan's father had come home one day to find his wife in bed with another man. In the ensuing fight, the other man had pulled a knife. Nathan and his sister, Twee, had been left orphans. Their mother had sold everything they owned and disappeared, leaving them with nothing but a small, worthless plot of land. Years later, she had returned, begging for forgiveness. For his sister's sake, Nathan had let her back into their lives, but he had never forgiven her. In his mind, she was a debt that could never be repaid. That night, after Nathan had left the hospital, Liam returned to my room. He sat by my bed for hours, just watching me sleep. He gently took my hand, his thumb stroking the back of it, his touch so light I didn't even stir. He stayed like that until he saw my eyelids flutter, and then he was gone, a ghost in the night. When I finally drifted back to consciousness, I thought I saw a familiar figure disappearing out the door. Liam. No, it couldn't be. I was just dreaming. But the warmth of a hand still lingered on mine, a phantom touch that left me feeling strangely unsettled. A few days later, Liam was discharged. He went back to the scene of the fight and, miraculously, found his wallet and his ID discarded in a nearby ditch. 3 months after that, he boarded a plane to the United States, leaving his past and me behind. 4 years later, Jane, can I have $200? The voice belonged to Twee, Nathan's now 16-year-old sister, a girl who my husband spoiled rotten. My phone screen is cracked, she whined, holding up the offending object. Twee was the one bright spot in my otherwise bleak existence. In the 4 years I had been married to Nathan, she was the only one in his family who treated me with any kindness. She helped with the housework, she talked to me, she made me feel almost human. Her mother, Eleanor, was another story entirely. A woman whose every word was a carefully crafted barb, designed to inflict the maximum amount of pain. I don't have any money, Twee, I said, my voice tired. When Nathan gets home, I'll ask him for you. Money. The word alone was enough to make my chest tighten. I had graduated from college 2 years ago, but Nathan and his mother had forbidden me from getting a job. What do you need to work for? Eleanor would sneer. Nathan is a director at a big company. He makes plenty of money, and I do well enough at the market. Your job is to stay home and take care of the house. Twee is in her final year of high school. She needs someone here to cook and clean for her. Going to work would just be a waste of time and money. Her logic was a cage, and I was trapped inside it. In the 4 years since that terrible night, my life had become a series of devastating blows. Just before Nathan left to study abroad, we had gotten married at the courthouse. I had moved into his mother's house, a stranger in a strange land. Not long after, I got the news that my mother was sick. My father had passed away a few months prior, his broken body finally giving up. I had rushed back to my hometown, just in time to spend the last few days of her life with her. It was only after she was gone that Aunt Carol told me the truth. My mother had been diagnosed with cancer months ago, but she had forbidden anyone from telling me. She didn't want to distract me from my studies. And there's something else, Jane, Carol had said, her voice heavy with a grief that was not her own. That day, the day with the loan sharks, they told your mother they were going to sell you into prostitution to pay off the debt. She was terrified, so she sold Lily. The words didn't make sense. Sold Lily? She sold her to a rich, childless couple, Carol continued, her own tears now flowing freely. For $50,000, she paid off the loan sharks, and the rest she gave to me. For you. She said to give it to you when you weren't angry with her anymore. She handed me a thick envelope. $30,000. My mother had lived in poverty, her body riddled with cancer, and she hadn't touched a single penny of it. The pain was a physical thing, a crushing weight that brought me to my knees. I had been so angry with her. I had let her die alone, thinking I hated her, and all along she had just been trying to save me. I took the money and went back to the city, a hollowed-out shell of a person. And then the final blow. I was attacked again. The details are a blur of pain and terror, a black hole in my memory. But when it was over, I was left with nothing. The $30,000, my last connection to my mother, was gone. And the bright, optimistic girl I had once been was gone with it. Jane, are you listening to me? Tui's voice snapped me back to the present. I wiped a stray tear from my eye. What did you say, honey? I said I want a new phone. Now. Okay, I sighed. Let's go to Nathan's office. I'll ask him to come down and give you the money. Let's go now, she said, grabbing my arm and pulling me towards the door. But Tui, look outside, I said, gesturing towards the window. Dark, ominous clouds were gathering, and the wind was beginning to howl. It's about to storm. I don't care, she said, her voice a stubborn whine. If you don't take me, I'll go by myself. I sighed, a weary, resigned sound. There was no arguing with her when she was like this. I was driving us through the city on my small scooter, the rain now coming down in a steady drizzle, when I heard it. The screech of tires behind us, followed by a loud, sickening crunch of metal. I instinctively pulled over to the side of the road. Get out of the way! A man's voice screamed, a frantic, desperate sound. Get out of the way! I didn't have time to think. I yanked the scooter up onto the sidewalk, just as a large truck, its brakes clearly gone, came barreling towards us. I managed to pull Tui out of the way, but not far enough. The truck sideswiped her, sending her flying. She landed in a crumpled heap on the pavement, a dark pool of blood spreading out from under her head. For a moment, I was frozen, my mind unable to process what had just happened. Then, the world came crashing back in. Help! I screamed, my voice a raw, ragged sound. Somebody, please, call an ambulance. Help us. By some miracle, an ambulance was passing by. They loaded Tui onto a stretcher and raced us to the hospital. As they wheeled her into the emergency room, the heavens opened up, the rain now a torrential downpour. I stood in the hallway, shivering, my clothes soaked through, the cold seeping deep into my bones. But it was nothing compared to the icy terror that had gripped my heart. My hands, my legs, they were bleeding from my own fall, but I didn't feel a thing. The physical pain was a distant echo, drowned out by the roaring fear in my mind. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers numb and clumsy. I called Eleanor first, then Nathan. He answered on the second ring, his voice sharp with annoyance. "What is it?" "I told you not to call me unless it's an emergency." "Nathan," I choked out, the words catching in my throat. "It's Tui. There's been an accident. We're at County General. You need to come. Now." I dropped the phone, my hand falling limply to my side. A few minutes later, Eleanor arrived, her face a mask of thunderous rage. The moment she saw me, she launched herself at me, her hands like claws, slapping me again and again until I stumbled and fell to the hard, cold floor. "I told you to take care of her," she shrieked, her voice echoing in the sterile hallway. "What did you do? If anything happens to my daughter, I will kill you. You useless, worthless." I just lay there, the world a dizzying blur of pain and fluorescent lights. I didn't have the strength to get up, to defend myself. Her words were like stones, pelting me, bruising me, confirming the terrible truth I already knew. It was all my fault. A nurse rushed over, her face a mixture of alarm and pity. "Ma'am, you're injured too," she said, helping me to my feet. "Come with me, let me clean those cuts." She led me away, Eleanor's hateful glare following me down the hall. Just as I was being treated, Nathan burst through the emergency room doors, his face pale with panic. "Where is she? Where's Tui?" he demanded, grabbing his mother by the arms. "She's in surgery," Eleanor sobbed. "And Jane, that bitch. She's getting her scratches looked at." Nathan's face hardened. He found me just as I was leaving the treatment room. He grabbed me by the shoulders, his fingers digging into the tender flesh of my arms, his grip painfully tight. "What happened?" he snarled, shaking me so hard my teeth rattled. "Tell me what happened." The pain was excruciating. The fresh bandages on my arms were already beginning to soak through with blood. "You're hurting me, Nathan," I whimpered, tears streaming down my face. "Please, let go." It was at that moment that a woman's voice, sharp and authoritative, cut through the air. "Hey, get your hands off her." A woman I had never seen before strode towards us, her eyes blazing with a righteous fury. She shoved Nathan away from me with a surprising strength, sending him stumbling backwards. I swayed on my feet, about to collapse, but she caught me, her arm a steady, supportive presence around my waist. The woman was with a younger girl in a wheelchair, who watched the scene unfold with wide, curious eyes. Nathan stared at the stranger, his face a mixture of shock and indignation. "This is a private family matter," he spat. "It's none of your business. Now get lost." "When you're assaulting a woman in a public hospital, it becomes my business," she retorted, her voice dripping with contempt. "A real man doesn't hit women. You should be ashamed of yourself." She turned to me, her expression softening. "Honey," she said, her voice kind, "you need to get away from this piece of trash before he does some real damage." She pressed a business card into my hand. "If you need help, call me." She gave Nathan one last withering glare, then turned and walked away. I stared after her, a flicker of gratitude warming the cold landscape of my heart. "I tried to stop her," I whispered, turning back to Nathan, my voice trembling. "She wanted to go to your office to get money for a new phone. I told her it was going to rain, but she wouldn't listen." I hadn't even finished my sentence before his hand flew out, the crack of it hitting my cheek, echoing in the now silent hallway. I stared at him, stunned, a searing pain spreading across my face. In his eyes, I saw not a trace of the kind, gentle man I had married. I saw a stranger, a monster, and for the first time, A sliver of doubt, a terrifying question, began to worm its way into my heart. Who was this man? Who had I married? The surgeon came out then, his face grim. Tui had a broken leg, a fractured skull, and several broken ribs. It would be months before she recovered, but she would live. A wave of relief so profound it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. I turned to go back to the waiting room, and as I did, I bumped into someone. A tall man in an expensive-looking black suit. A hand shot out to steady me. "Are you all right?" The voice. It was so familiar. A voice from another lifetime. I looked up, and my heart stopped. It was Liam. I stood there, frozen, unable to speak, to move, to breathe. He looked different, older, more mature. The lanky, awkward boy was gone, replaced by a handsome, confident man. But the eyes were the same. Do I know you?" he asked, a flicker of confusion in his expression. His question broke the spell. "No," I said quickly, my voice a hoarse whisper. "I'm fine. I'm sorry. I practically ran away from him," my heart hammering against my ribs. He looked at me like I was a complete stranger, like the 2 years we had spent together, the love, the pain, the child we had created, like none of it had ever happened. It was a rejection so complete, so absolute, that it felt like a physical blow. I took a cab home to get some things for Tui. As I approached our apartment building, I saw them. A group of 4 men, their faces hard and menacing, were walking into the building's lobby. My blood ran cold. It was him, the loan shark, Namho, and his thugs. What were they doing here? 1,000 panicked questions flooded my mind. I ducked behind a parked car, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I waited until they were inside. Then, my fear warring with a strange, morbid curiosity, I followed them. I crept up to our apartment door and listened. I could hear their voices, muffled but distinct. I recognized one of them immediately. It was a voice that haunted my nightmares, a voice that belonged to the man who had destroyed my life 4 years ago, the man who had taken everything from me. My blood turned to ice in my veins. A sudden, reckless impulse took over. I pulled out my phone, switched it to video mode, and held it up to the peephole, praying they wouldn't see the faint light from the screen. "So when are you gonna pay me, Mark?" I heard Namho's gravelly voice say. "My nephew. He's got money now, boss." The other man, the one from my nightmares, whined. "Just give me a few more days, please, that two-timing bastard." Namho scoffed. "You think he's gonna give you a dime? The only reason he's got any money is because he's a professional leech, sucking the life out of every woman he meets." I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. Nephew? It couldn't be. It was impossible. But then, I heard Namho's next words, and the last, fragile remnants of my world shattered into a million pieces. "You and that worthless nephew of yours. You think I don't know what you did? Using my name to pull off a kidnapping and ransom? The only reason that son of a bitch has a pot to piss in is because of you, and the only reason you're not in a ditch somewhere is because of him." I stumbled away from the door, my legs barely able to support me. I collapsed onto the stairs, the world spinning around me. I fumbled with my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. I played back the video, and there he was, the man from my nightmares, the man who had brutalized me, who had stolen my mother's money, my future, my very soul. And he was Nathan's uncle. The memories, the ones I had tried so hard to bury, came rushing back, a tidal wave of pain and terror. I was drowning in them, and then my phone rang. It was Nathan. My heart leaped into my throat. I took a deep, shuddering breath and answered, "Where the hell are you?" He roared, his voice a furious explosion in my ear. I'm at home," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "I came to get some clothes for Ty. Do you not have a mouth? Can you not speak? Or are you just as useless as a dog?" But the girl who would have cowered before his anger was gone. In her place was a woman who had just had her entire world ripped apart. A woman who had nothing left to lose. "When, Nathan?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "When are you going to let this dog off its leash? Or are you planning to keep me chained up for the rest of your life? A convenient servant for you and your family." I hung up before he could reply. In the hospital, Nathan stared at his phone, his face a mask of stunned disbelief. The obedient, submissive wife he had so carefully cultivated, the woman he treated as nothing more than an unpaid maid, had just talked back to him. He had married me because he knew I had a child with another man, because he knew I was damaged goods. It made me easy to control. He had used his uncle to orchestrate my kidnapping, my rape, all to get his hands on the $30,000 my mother had left me. He had told me it was ransom money, that he had saved me, and I, in my grief and my gratitude, had believed him. I had married my tormentor. He stood there for a long time, the pieces of his carefully constructed world beginning to crumble around him. At home, I waited until Nam Ho and his men were gone. Then, with a strange, cold calm, I went inside to pack a bag for Thuy. As I was pulling some of her clothes from a dresser, my hand brushed against something hard, tucked away in the back. I pulled it out. It was a small, dusty box. Inside were 2 old cell phones. One was mine, the one that had been lost the night of the attack, 5 years ago. The other was Liam's. I sank to the floor, the 2 phones clutched in my hands. A new, more terrifying question began to form in my mind. Just how deep did this deception go? How monstrous, truly, was the man I had married? I slipped the 2 phones into my bag, a cold resolve settling over me. I finished packing Thuy's things and left the apartment, the place where I had lived a lie for 4 years, without a backward glance. The man I had married, the man I had trusted, was a monster wearing the mask of a saint. Every kind word, every gentle touch, had been a part of an elaborate, cruel deception. Back at the hospital, I tried to make myself invisible. I kept my head down, my interactions with Nathan brief and emotionless. I couldn't bear to look at him, to see the face of the man who had orchestrated my ruin. As I was heading towards the elevator, I saw him again. Liam. He was pushing the young girl in the wheelchair, the one who had been with the kind woman who had helped me. He looked different. Not just the expensive suit and the confident air. There was a sadness in his eyes, a haunted, distant look that hadn't been there before. He was still handsome, but the boyish charm had been replaced by a heavy, world-weary maturity. We ended up in the same elevator. The silence was thick, suffocating. The young girl, Amelia, kept looking at me, her expression a mixture of curiosity and a strange, unreadable sympathy. I wanted to say something, to thank her sister, but the words wouldn't come. And Liam acted as if I didn't exist, as if we were 2 complete strangers, sharing a small, enclosed space for a few awkward moments. As we rode up, my hand trembling, I slipped Liam's old phone into the pocket of his suit jacket. I don't know why I did it. It was a reckless, impulsive act, born of a desperation I couldn't articulate. Maybe I wanted him to remember. Maybe I wanted him to know that what we had, what he had thrown away, was real. The elevator doors opened on the 4th floor. He went one way, and I went the other. But after a few steps, he stopped. He turned and looked at me, his brow furrowed in a strange, pensive expression. He stared at my back as I walked away, a flicker of something, a ghost of a memory, in his eyes. "What is it, Liam?" Amelia asked, her voice soft. "Nothing," he said, shaking his head as if to clear it. "It's nothing. Let's go." I had just stepped into Tui's room when Nathan appeared, his face a mask of cold fury. Before I could even put down my bag, his hand flew out, the slap echoing in the small, sterile room. "Where the hell have you been?" he snarled. But this time, I was ready. I stumbled back, my cheek stinging, but I didn't cower. I didn't cry. I just looked at him, my eyes burning with a cold, clear hatred. The impact sent me reeling against the wall, and for a moment, the physical pain was so intense, it was all I could feel. But it was nothing compared to the agony in my soul. I could feel the hot, salty tears welling in my eyes, but I blinked them back, refusing to give him the satisfaction. I touched my lip, my fingers coming away bloody, and I looked at him, really looked at him, searching his face for any sign of remorse, of pity, of the man I thought I had married. But there was nothing, only a cold, contemptuous disgust, and in that moment, I knew. The love I had once felt for him, the hope, the gratitude, it was all gone, replaced by a single, all-consuming emotion, hatred. My defiance seemed to enrage him further. He lunged at me again, his face contorted with a primal fury. But this time, I fought back. I kicked, I scratched, I fought like a cornered animal. He was stronger, but my rage gave me a strength I didn't know I possessed. He was about to overpower me when the door to the room swung open. A doctor stood there, his face a mixture of shock and disapproval. Nathan froze, his hand raised to strike me again. He quickly composed himself, a sheepish, embarrassed expression on his face. The doctor just looked at him, his eyes cold with contempt, then turned his attention to Tui. After a brief examination, he left, but not before giving Nathan a long, pointed look. "The patient is recovering well," he said, his voice clipped. "But this is a VIP room. I expect you to maintain a certain level of decorum." As soon as the doctor was gone, I noticed them. 2 small, discreet security cameras mounted in the corners of the room. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. "Why, Nathan?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Why do you hate me so much?" He just stared at me, his eyes full of a venomous loathing. "I don't have time for this," he snarled. "You take care of my sister. If anything happens to her, I'll make you wish you were never born." He turned and stalked out of the room. I stood there, my body trembling, my heart a shattered wreck. But through the pain, a new feeling was beginning to take root. A cold, hard resolve. I would not be a victim anymore. I went to the hospital's security office and, with a story about a cheating husband, convinced a sympathetic young technician to give me a copy of the camera footage from Thui's room. That night, the video of Nathan hitting me went viral. The handsome, successful young director, the loving husband, the perfect man he had so carefully presented to the world, was exposed as a violent, abusive monster. His company's latest project was immediately shelved. His career, his reputation, his carefully constructed life, all of it came crashing down around him. The next day, Eleanor stormed into the hospital, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. She slapped me, she screamed at me, she called me every vile name she could think of. And that night, The video of her attacking me went viral too. The mother and son became the laughingstock of the city, their names synonymous with hypocrisy and abuse. Her small business at the market was boycotted. Her friends and neighbors turned their backs on her. The perfect family was revealed to be a toxic, dysfunctional nightmare. Tui, meanwhile, had recovered enough to be her usual, spoiled self. She treated me like a servant, demanding and ungrateful. To give myself the time and space I needed to plan my next move, I deliberately antagonized her, knowing she would complain to Nathan. It worked. He hired a nurse to help care for her, leaving me with long stretches of time to myself. But he couldn't resist one last parting shot. If she's unhappy one more time, I will personally erase you from this planet, he hissed before he left, his words a venomous promise. I just stood there, my face a mask of carefully constructed grief, my eyes welling up with tears. Can't you just talk to me nicely? I whimpered, playing my part to perfection. You never used to be like this. He just sneered. Take a look at yourself, he said, his voice dripping with contempt. Are you really worth my sweet words? As soon as he was gone, my tears dried up, my face hardening into a mask of cold, calculating resolve. A few hours later, I feigned a sudden, agonizing stomachache. The nurse, a kind, middle-aged woman, was frantic with worry. She called Nathan, but he just barked at her to handle it herself and hung up. You should go home and rest, the nurse said, her voice full of a genuine concern. I can take care of things here. Thank you, I said, my voice weak but sincere. Thank you so much. As I walked out of the hospital, I looked at my watch. It was 1 p.m. The city was a bustling, chaotic blur around me. For the first time in a long time, I was completely, utterly alone. I had no one to turn to, no one to trust. And then I remembered the business card, the kind, strong woman who had helped me. I pulled it from my pocket. It was a simple, elegant card. At the top, in a clean, modern font, were the words, Liam Stone, CEO, Stone Holdings, and below that, an address and a phone number, Liam. It had to be a coincidence. It had to be. But what if it wasn't? With nothing left to lose, I hailed a cab and gave the driver the address on the card. Liam had been working late. As he was leaving the office, he shrugged on his suit jacket. It slipped from his grasp and fell to the floor with a strange, heavy thud. A jacket shouldn't make a sound like that. Puzzled, he picked it up, and in the inside pocket, he found it, an old, cracked cell phone. A phone he recognized immediately. His old phone, the one he had lost 5 years ago. He sank into his office chair, his heart pounding a strange, erratic rhythm. And as he stared at the phone, a jumble of fragmented, disjointed images flashed through his mind. A girl's laughter, the smell of rain, the taste of cheap coffee, a searing, unbearable pain. He didn't know where the phone had come from, but he knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that it was a key to a past he had forgotten, a past that was, for some reason, screaming to be remembered. The next morning, he had his IT guy run a diagnostic on the phone. The data was corrupted, the screen shattered, but they were able to recover most of it. And on it, he found them. Pictures. Hundreds of pictures. Of him and a girl. The girl from the hospital. The girl from the restaurant. The girl whose face haunted his fragmented, broken memories. He found a journal, a digital diary of their life together, and he began to read. I'm pregnant, and he wants me to get rid of it. He says we're not ready. He says we don't have the money. He doesn't understand. This is our baby, our child. Liam's hands were trembling. He couldn't breathe. A baby. He had a child he had tried to erase. The pain was a physical thing, a crushing weight on his chest. He closed the laptop, unable to read anymore. A wave of dizziness washed over him, and the world went black. I sat on a bench across the street from the towering glass and steel building, my hands clenched into tight fists in my lap. I waited for hours, my stomach a knot of anxiety. By 8 o'clock, the building was dark, the steady stream of employees slowing to a trickle. She hadn't come out. My last, desperate hope was gone. I buried my face in my hands, my body shaking with silent, racking sobs. "Are you okay?" The voice was soft, hesitant. I looked up, my vision blurred with tears. A figure was standing over me, a dark silhouette against the streetlights. A man. I'm fine, I stammered, trying to pull myself together. "Let me help you up." He reached down, his hand warm and steady on my arm. He pulled me to my feet, and as I looked up into his face, my heart stopped. It was Liam. The world tilted on its axis. We just stood there, under the cold, artificial glare of the streetlights, two ghosts from another lifetime, staring at each other in stunned silence. The years melted away, and for a heart-stopping moment, he was just Liam, the boy I had loved with a fierce, reckless passion, and I was just Jane, the girl whose heart he had broken. Tears streamed down my face, hot and unstoppable. The sight of him, the memory of what we had lost, the crushing weight of everything that had happened since. It was too much. "Do I know you?" he asked again, his voice a low, hesitant whisper, his brow furrowed with a painful, desperate confusion. "Your voice, it's so familiar, but I can't." His words were a fresh wave of pain. He didn't remember. He really didn't remember. The world started to spin, the edges of my vision turning gray and fuzzy. My legs gave out from under me, and as I fell, he caught me, his arms strong and sure around me. I woke up to the soft, gentle light of a sun-drenched room. My head was pounding, a dull, throbbing ache. For a moment, I was completely disoriented. The room was unfamiliar. The luxurious silk sheets a world away from the threadbare blankets I was used to. I was lying on my side, my head pillowed on a man's bare arm. I turned my head, and my breath caught in my throat. It was Liam. He was fast asleep, his face relaxed, his breathing deep and even. The memories of the previous night came rushing back in a confusing, chaotic jumble. A phone on the bedside table began to ring, a shrill, insistent sound. I carefully, quietly, sat up, trying not to wake him, but as I reached for the phone, his hand shot out, his fingers closing over mine. Our skin touched, and a jolt, a spark of something long forgotten, shot through me. I snatched my hand back as if I'd been burned. The sudden movement woke him. He sat up, his eyes still clouded with sleep. He reached for the phone, and as he did, his hand brushed against mine again. I scrambled to get out of the bed, but a wave of dizziness washed over me, and I stumbled, almost falling. "Careful," he said, his voice thick with sleep. He reached out and grabbed my arm to steady me, but his pull was too strong, and I lost my balance, tumbling back onto the bed, landing on top of him. For a long, heart-stopping moment, we were just there, tangled up in the sheets, my face just inches from his. And in that moment, I saw it, a flicker of something in his eyes, a flash of recognition, a ghost of a memory. I quickly scrambled off of him, my face burning with a mixture of embarrassment and a strange, unfamiliar hope. I'm sorry, I stammered. It's okay, he said, a small, wry smile playing on his lips. I was up all night looking after you. I guess I just fell asleep. Our eyes met, and in the quiet intimacy of that moment, the years of anger and resentment, of pain and betrayal, seemed to melt away, leaving behind only the ghost of what we had once been. You seem so familiar, he said again, his voice a low, wondering murmur. I just smiled, a sad, watery smile. Do I? His words were a puzzle I couldn't solve. How could he have forgotten? The phone on the bedside table started ringing again. He picked it up. Hello? He said. Oh, great. I'll be there in a little while to pick it up. He hung up and turned to me, a strange, intense look in his eyes. He opened the drawer of the bedside table and pulled out the business card, the one the kind woman had given me. Who gave this to you? He asked, his voice sharp. I found it in your pocket last night. A woman, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I met her at the hospital. He pulled a framed photo from the drawer. It was her, the woman who had helped me. Was it her? I nodded. Yes, that's her, she told me. She told me to call her if I ever needed help. Well, he said, a small, unreadable smile on his face. Let's go see her then. He drove me to a magnificent, sprawling villa, a place that looked like it had been plucked from the pages of a glossy magazine. She's inside, he said as he pulled up to the ornate iron gates. I have to go run an errand. Someone will let you in. He drove off, leaving me standing there, my heart pounding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. I took a deep breath and rang the bell. The woman who answered the door was his sister, Clara. She smiled at me, a warm, welcoming smile that immediately put me at ease. She led me inside, her kindness a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. We sat in a beautiful, sun-drenched living room, and I told her everything, the lies, the betrayal, the abuse. I told her I wanted revenge. What do you need? She asked, her voice calm and steady. I need a listening device, I said, the words feeling strange and foreign in my mouth, and a hidden camera, and a fake life insurance policy. In my name. Is that all? She asked, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Yes, I said, my voice firm. The rest I have to do myself. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I blinked them back, refusing to cry. I had shed enough tears to last a lifetime. All right, she said, her voice full of a quiet, fierce resolve. I'll help you. Come to my brother's company tomorrow. He'll have everything you need. As I was leaving, Liam's car pulled into the driveway. For a moment, our eyes met across the manicured lawn. I quickly looked away, my heart doing a strange, painful somersault in my chest. But he got out of the car and strode towards me, his face a mask of grim determination. He grabbed my arm, his grip like iron, and pulled me back inside the house, past his startled sister, up the grand staircase, and into his bedroom, slamming the door and locking it behind us. The room was dark, the heavy curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. I could feel his eyes on me, a burning, intense gaze that seemed to see right through me. Tell me, he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Do we know each other? And did you put this in my pocket? He held up the phone, his old phone. I just stood there, my head bowed. The tears I had tried so hard to hold back now streaming down my face. I couldn't speak. I couldn't explain. He let out a frustrated sigh, a sound of pure, raw anguish. And then he did something that shattered the last fragile remnants of my composure. He pulled me into his arms, his embrace fierce, desperate, and held me as if he would never let me go. And as he held me, I could feel his body shaking, and I knew, with a certainty that broke my heart, that he was crying too. Liam had taken the repaired phone to a friend of his, a tech genius who had been able to recover all of the data and transfer it to a USB drive. Back in his office, Liam had plugged it in, his hands trembling, and he had seen it all. The pictures, the journal, the truth. The car accident in the States hadn't just broken his body, it had shattered his memories, leaving behind a black, empty void. But now, the pieces were coming back, sharp and painful, and with them, a crushing, unbearable guilt. He had held me until I had cried myself to sleep, a small, broken thing in his arms. He had called Clara, and together they had taken me to the hospital. The diagnosis was malnutrition, exhaustion, and a litany of internal injuries from Nathan's beatings. The doctor had said that if I had continued on that path, I would have been dead within a year. Clara had told him the rest of the story, about how she and my mother had arranged for him to adopt Lily, about how he had been sending money every month, not out of guilt, but out of a desperate, forgotten love, about how the accident had stolen his memories, but not the deep, instinctual need to protect his child. The next day, I had discharged myself from the hospital and gone straight to his office. He had arrived just in time to see his new personal assistant, a woman with a predatory glint in her eyes, physically throwing me out of the building. He had fired her on the spot, then scooped me up into his arms and carried me back to his car. And now, here we were, two broken people, haunted by the ghosts of a past that refused to stay buried. He brought me a bowl of porridge, his movements gentle, hesitant. "Here are the things you asked for," he said, pushing a small box across the table towards me. "The camera, the listening device, and the insurance policy. If you need a lawyer, a private investigator, just say the word." I just stared at him, my heart a tangled knot of confusion and a strange, unfamiliar hope. "Why are you looking at me like that?" he asked, his voice a low, rough whisper. "Do you regret it?" I didn't know what to say. "I know where your daughter is, Jane." His words were a punch to the gut. I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. "Where?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Please, Liam, tell me where she is." He looked at me, his eyes dark and unreadable. "Be my mistress," he said, his voice cold, devoid of emotion, "and I'll take you to her." The cruelty of his words was a physical blow. I recoiled as if he had slapped me. How can you be so heartless? "Not as heartless as a woman who sells her own child for money," he spat. His words were a knife, twisting in a wound that would never heal. But he was right. I had no right to his kindness, to his pity. I had made my choices, and I would live with the consequences. "Fine," I said, my voice a dead, empty whisper. "I'll do it. I'll be your mistress." He pushed a piece of paper and a pen across the table. "Write this down," he said, his voice a cold, flat monotone. "I, Jane Miller, agree to be the mistress of Liam Stone. I will remain with him until he decides to marry and have children with another woman. I will also take on the responsibility of raising our daughter." My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold the pen, but I wrote it all down, my tears blurring the ink on the page. When I was finished, he took the paper from me, his face a mask of cold indifference. "Any objections?" he asked. "No," I said, my voice barely audible. "As long as I can be with my daughter, I don't care about anything else." How touching, he sneered. I'm sure Lily will be thrilled to know that the mother who sold her is so eager to be a part of her life. His words were a fresh wave of agony. I fell to my knees, my body shaking with violent, racking sobs. Please, I begged, my voice a raw, ragged sound. Please, don't tell her. I'm begging you. He turned away from me, his shoulders rigid. I would never hurt my daughter, he said, his voice a low, rough whisper. Now get up, and don't you dare try to run away again. He pulled me to my feet, his touch surprisingly gentle. You're sick, he said, his voice softening almost imperceptibly. You're in no condition to go anywhere. Do you not want to see your daughter? He held me then, his arms a safe, strong haven in the storm of my life. He ranted, he raved, he unleashed all the pent-up anger and hurt of the past 5 years. And I just stood there, in the circle of his arms, and let him, because I knew I deserved it. That night, I slept in his bed, a deep, dreamless sleep, the first real rest I had had in years. When I woke up, the sun was streaming through the windows, and he was gone. I quietly slipped out of the house, the small box of spy equipment clutched in my hand like a talisman. It was time to end this. It was time to make him pay. I went to a private investigator, a friend of Liam's. I gave him Nathan's name, his social media profile, and a simple instruction: find everything. I wanted to know about his wife, his family, his business, his secrets. I wanted to know where he had hidden the bodies. Then, I went to a doctor, another friend of Liam's, a man with kind, sad eyes, and I began to set my trap. I returned to the house I had once shared with Nathan, a ghost in my own life. I planted the bugs, the cameras, in every room, in every dark corner. I placed the fake insurance policy on the coffee table, a carefully laid piece of bait. Then, I curled up on the couch and waited. Eleanor found me first. She threw a bucket of cold water on me, her face contorted with a familiar, hateful rage. Where have you been, you lazy bitch? The house is a mess, but the girl who would have cowered before her was gone. I stood up, my eyes blazing with a cold, clear fire. If you want a maid, then hire one, I said, my voice dangerously quiet, because I quit. She was so shocked she was speechless. And then Nathan came home. He saw the look on his mother's face. He saw the defiance in my eyes, and he exploded. He hit me again and again, and I let him. I fell to the floor, my body a canvas of pain, and as I did, my hand accidentally knocked the insurance policy onto the floor. He saw it. He snatched it up, his eyes scanning the document with a frantic, greedy energy. An insurance policy for $200,000. In my name. Where did you get the money for this? He roared, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and a dawning, terrible suspicion. Did you steal from me? Are you planning to run? He kicked me, his foot connecting with my ribs with a sickening crunch. The pain was so intense, I almost blacked out. It was my mother's. I gasped, the words coming out in a pained, breathless rush. She paid the premiums for years. My Aunt Carol was the one who kept it for me. The lie was a perfect, beautiful thing. A seed of greed planted in the fertile ground of his own corruption. He beat me until I was unconscious, then, in a panic, called an ambulance. But it was an ambulance that I had arranged, an ambulance staffed by a doctor who was a friend of Liam's. A few days later, while I was recovering in a private hospital room, Nam-ho and his men paid Nathan a visit. Liam had arranged it. He had given them the proof of Nathan's betrayal, the evidence of his carefully orchestrated deceptions, and they had come to collect. Not just the original debt, but a new one, $300,000 for the betrayal, for the use of their name, for the sheer, unadulterated gall of it all. Nathan, trapped and desperate, did the only thing a cornered rat can do. He fought back. He and his uncle, the man who had been his partner in crime, his mentor in the art of cruelty, turned on each other, and in the end, in a fit of pure primal rage, Nathan plunged a kitchen knife into his uncle's chest, killing him instantly. And through it all, Liam and I watched. We watched on the hidden cameras I had planted. We listened on the bugs. We saw it all. And an hour later, Liam made an anonymous call to the police. They found Nathan in the bathroom, in the process of dismembering his uncle's body, his face a mask of cold, emotionless concentration. In the hospital, the kind doctor, a man named Dr. Evans, came to my room. He told me everything. Nathan's arrest, the murder charge, the end of the nightmare, and he told me something else. The test results came back, he said, his voice gentle. You have a severe nutritional deficiency, and your internal injuries are extensive. If you don't take care of yourself, Jane, if you don't rest, you're not going to make it. He paused, his eyes full of a deep, profound sadness. You don't want to see your daughter again? His words were a lifeline, a reason to live. I had been planning to use a fake diagnosis, stage 4 liver cancer, to push Nathan over the edge, to trick him into helping me end my suffering and incriminate himself in the process. But now I didn't have to. The monster was in a cage, and I was free. A few days later, the private investigator called. Nathan's perfect wife, the woman he had been cheating on me with for years, had a secret of her own. She had been cheating on him with his boss, and the 4-year-old boy Nathan thought was his son wasn't. I had the investigator send the DNA test results, along with a stack of incriminating photos, to Eleanor. I wanted her to know what it felt like to be betrayed, to have her perfect world crumble into dust. And then, another twist, a discovery so profound, so utterly life-altering, that it felt like a dream. Dr. Evans, during a routine examination, had noticed a small, star-shaped birthmark on the back of my neck, a birthmark that was identical to one his long-lost niece had, a niece who had been taken by her mother over 24 years ago, after a bitter divorce. A DNA test confirmed it. I had a family, a father, 2 younger sisters, a family who had been searching for me for my entire life. A month later, I was discharged from the hospital. Liam was supposed to pick me up, but he was called away on a last-minute business trip. I stood in the hospital lobby, a small, worn-out bag at my feet, and I realized, with a sudden, crushing clarity, that I had nowhere to go. And then I saw her, Clara, and holding her hand was a small, beautiful girl with wide, curious eyes and a smile that was a perfect, heart-stopping echo of Liam's. My daughter, Lily. She ran to me, her small arms wrapping around my legs, her face buried in my dress. Mama? She whispered, her voice a small, hopeful question. I sank to my knees, my body trembling, my heart a wild, beautiful symphony of love and pain, and a joy so profound it was almost unbearable. Yes, my sweet girl, I sobbed, my tears falling freely now, hot and cleansing. Mama's here. Liam returned a few days later. He found us in the garden of Clara's villa, Lily asleep in my arms, her small, warm body a perfect, precious weight against my heart. He didn't say anything. He just sat down beside me, his presence a quiet, comforting warmth. I'm sorry, Jane, he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name. For everything. I know, I said, and I did. We were married a month later, not in a grand, opulent ceremony, but in a small, quiet service at the courthouse, with only our family as witnesses. We didn't need the pomp and circumstance. We just needed each other. A year after that, I gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. Lily was a fiercely protective, endlessly doting older sister. Our house was filled with the sound of laughter, of children's games, of a joy so profound, so hard-won, that it felt sacred. As for Nathan, he was sentenced to life in prison. His perfect wife left him for his boss, taking her son with her. Eleanor, broken and alone, sold everything she owned to pay for his appeals, but it was useless. Not long after, she died of cancer, a bitter, lonely woman whose life had been consumed by her own hatred. And Thuy, after a long and difficult recovery, was never the same. The bright, vivacious girl was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed stranger who spent the rest of her days in a private mental institution. Sometimes, at night, when the house is quiet and the children are asleep, Liam and I will sit on the porch, our hands intertwined, and look up at the stars. We don't talk much. We don't have to. The silence between us is a comfortable, easy thing, filled with the unspoken understanding of two people who have been to hell and back and have found their way home. We are not the same people we were all those years ago. We are scarred, we are broken, but we are whole, and we are, finally, at peace.